Hi, this is Alex from PHP Academy. In this tutorial, we're going to be creating a pure CSS drop-down list menu, so 100% CSS. Now what you can see at the moment in my browser is exactly what we're going to be creating. I'll demonstrate it in just a moment. You can see some inline text here and then we've got a paragraph underneath. This is just purely for the fact that to demonstrate that the drop-down menu is not going to interfere with anything else on the page, so it sits in line. So this is basically the menu. I've given it the label actions, and when we hover over, you can see that we get this drop down menu here that we can select specific options from. So these are all links. We can go ahead and click them. That's just gone to hash because I haven't included any URLs. So that will take us through to either an action or, it can be anything because it's just an anchor tag. So as I said, everything that you see here is going to be CSS. I'll walk you through what the kind of elements we've got here. We've got a background which is a CSS gradient, which we're going to be generating just to save time and make sure it's cross-browser compatible. And we've got this downward triangle here which represents an arrow, and that's also CSS as well. Now this drop down works in Firefox, Chrome, IE 9 and 8. It doesn't work in IE 7, but who cares. It is responsive, so if we were to go ahead and add in some different text, let me just go ahead and open my text editor. This is the markup that you can see here. If I was to go ahead and say actions and more stuff, for example, and go ahead and refresh, you can see that that's expanded. We've still got this arrow. We've got a bit of padding here, which we've added on purpose just to accommodate for any long text within here. And again, what we can do is if this is short and it's view profile and more stuff, for example. Now what happens here is I've taken the consideration that you may have limited space if you have a lot of these drop downs. So what it does is the text wraps down to the next line and the list item just increases here in height. So that's another consideration, and something that's going to allow you to keep a fixed width to these if you want. Now with mobile devices, this is slightly trickier because obviously some mobile devices, the browsers on mobile devices don't have arrows that you can point and everything. It's click. So if you were on a mobile device, you may have problems with this just for the fact that we can't hover over anything because we're using the hover pseudo element in CSS. I'm sure there'll be some kind of workaround to that though. The final downside of this is, well, not downside, but if you're developing this as part of your site, other styles on your website may affect this. For example, if you have a global style for unordered lists and list items within them, even links and the size and everything of links, then you may have problems. So if you are following this from the start, it's probably a good idea to just do it from scratch first of all to get a feel of what we're doing and how everything works, and then go ahead and try and incorporate this into your site. And I guess the final benefit to this is that if we were to scale the web page size up, so I'm just holding control and flicking my mouse trackball or wheel, then it remains responsive in terms of this. So nothing moves around, which is perfect, particularly for accessibility reasons. So what we'll do is we will blank our canvas, if you like, within our text editor, and we'll start writing this from scratch. Okay, so we're over to our text editor. We've got some basic markup, everything that we need here to start, using CSS and markup together. We've got a styles.css file, which I've included on this page, so we can now add our styles in here and our markup in here. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is the markup. This is really, really important, but we're not going to jump in and do the entire list first of all. We're just going to create the overall wrapper for this and then the button. So we'll be styling the button up because the main composition of this is just a generic button style. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create an overall element or a wrapper element, and I'm going to call this tools. So we've got an overall tools. Inside of here we're going to have one button, and then we're going to have the unordered list as well. So that's going to be within a class called tool, and we'll have our button just here. So I'll just say actions like I had before. The href for this is going to be hash, and the class here is going to be, in fact we can leave that, we don't really need to append a class to that. Okay, so this is our basic markup, and in here's going to be the unordered list. Like I said, we're not going to be styling that just straight away. So when I refresh, we've just got a standard anchor on the page, a link on the page that we can start working with. So the first thing I want to go ahead and do is create a style rule for this. So we have, I'll create a style rule for the overall tools wrapper first, and then we'll have tools A. So any anchor element within the tools overall wrapper, we're going to add specific styles to. So the first thing we'll go ahead and do is give this a background. Now we know we want to use a gradient for the background, and you may have noticed this tab just open here. And this is a really, really great CSS gradient generator that I use very often. And I've chosen this block here. There's some presets here already. And I've chosen the vertical direction. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. That's copied to the clipboard. I'll go ahead and get rid of that. And we'll go ahead and paste this directly into here. Now it is quite messy. Let's first of all indent this. It's quite messy, but unfortunately at the time of recording, CSS doesn't support easily implemented gradients, so we have to use all of these. And you may want to go ahead and give this some kind of background color. I'm going to choose EEE for older browsers that don't support anything at all, so at least we have some kind of gray background on there. Okay, some of the other properties that we're going to give this is display block. Now the reason that we do this is so we can give it some padding, and it doesn't affect the in terms of the browser default being inline. So by default a anchor tag will be an inline display. We're going to go ahead and give this a color, so I'm just going to choose something like 101010, and I'm going to give this a text decoration of none. Now that basically just means that we're removing the underline here. You can already see that we've got this long strip now with the gradient, so we're making some kind of progress. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and give this some padding. So padding, let's say 2 pixels on north and south, and then we'll have 10 pixels on each side. So there. So we've got 2 pixels at the top, 2 pixels at the bottom, 10 here and 10 here. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and we're going to set a border to this, just so we can sort of define it a bit better, or we can see it a bit better. So this is going to be a 1 pixel border. It's going to be solid, and I'm going to choose CCC for the color, so slightly darker than what we've already got for the gradient. So you can already start to see this coming together, although we do have this problem where we've got this long thing here, and we don't want that. We want it to display inline from for other text. So for example, just before here, if I said inline, and I go ahead and refresh, this is displayed above here. That's because this is displayed as a block, and therefore it will automatically come to a new line. It will fill up the entire width of the parent element, and that's body in this case. So what we need to do is we need to make some modifications to the overall wrapper here. So we're going to say position relative. Now position relative hasn't got anything to do with what I'm doing in terms of this being displayed inline, but we're going to be using an absolute position for the unordered list within this. And the reason for that, we need the position relative so things don't float away, but I'll demonstrate that a bit later on. So now we're going to display inline block on this, and if I refresh, now you see that that has displayed inline, but it's still block, so we can still style it like a block element. Okay, so we've now got our button. It's starting to look actually like a button. We've still got this, and we've got the entire area that we can click on as well. That's really important. That's basically due to the fact that we've given this padding display of block. We can click anywhere on this element, which is really handy in terms of user experience. So that's it for the first part. We've created our generic button. In the next part, we're going to start to include this little arrow and then start to style the overall list, and then we'll add that hover effect to it.